Good morning. It's so good to not have to finally just say, good morning, Crestview, stand and we'll pray. With that, thank you. I do appreciate getting to do that every week. Obviously, this is a much bigger scale in general. A lot of people. I just want to thank everybody that is over here in this vicinity for being here. Anyways, as we get into the message today, I am 19 years old with one semester of college done, so bear with me. If it's really bad, just blame Jam and Jerry because they hired me. Just kidding. With that in mind, though, I want to preface this message with the understanding that you shouldn't be here based on my abilities. Shouldn't be here based on whether or not you like me, you like Jam or Jerry. You should be here every Sunday, coming and trusting in God to restore you for the next week, while also doing your own personal responsibilities to grow your intimate relationship with Him. So who am I? My name is Ridge McDonald. I am the youth pastor here at Crestview. But how did I get here? Well, when I was a freshman in high school, I felt called into ministry. Growing up out at Victory Mountain Camp, which a lot of us here know that place and love it dearly. But with that calling, I began to try to figure out, what do I do? If this is what the Lord's calling me to, there's a lot of different stuff with sports and, clubs that I was joining, trying to figure out, let's do FCA, let's do Young Life. But when it got down to college, I tried to figure out, where am I going to be best equipped to do this ministry life? And so I actually went to SWU, Southern Western University, and, toured down there just to get to see the campus, and didn't feel that was where the Lord wanted me. And so I came back, had some conversations with a couple of buddies of mine who were in my youth group, and we went and viewed Liberty University. So went down there for a weekend and fell in love with it. Getting down there, trying to get a degree in youth ministry, felt a lot more confident that was where I should be, because when you're sitting in class with your youth professor and he says, people go to Harvard for a law degree, but people come to Liberty for a youth ministry degree. They have 10, I think, courses that are specifically for youth ministry, and no other even Bible college offers something that is that strenuous at times. But, then it was, where are you going to go during the summer? We want you to get experience. We want you to grow in your knowledge of being in a church and being where you're going to be in the next couple of years. So you need to start looking at getting an internship. Well, I came down here after having conversations with my dad about, feeling that I needed to do some more out at camp, that the Lord had placed me out there for a reason, for years, really all of my life. The past 3 years, I've served as a CIT, and we had this CIT leadership team that I was a part of, that I wasn't ready to just kind of move on from. And so it was kind of clear, well, you've got a couple of options if you want to get this internship and still be able to help out at camp during the summer. And so I came down, I was like, well, obviously I need to talk to Jam. The youth group there, those are my people. The family here, these are my people. And so I came down, we had a wedding. I think it was Zach and Candace's wedding. But I came down on a Friday after school, saw Jam at a game, and just was like, let me run this idea by you. What would it look like for me to, do a summer internship with Crestview and be with Jacob, and get to help out at camp, because I really want to be able to do that, but I need some experience. Oh, yeah, I love that, come on. And so, no problem. As long as you want to stay, we'll hook you up, something. But I ended up, having that conversation and getting through the weekend. I stayed for church, ended up staying for youth, and then Liberty's actually only 2 hours from here, so I drove after youth to go back. But what most people didn't know, really nobody knew that I was doing that at that point, or having that conversation. But I went back to school, and the Lord pressed upon my heart to start fasting. I'd never done that before. I knew, that's something that the Bible talks about doing and how it helps us in our walk as Christians. Just, giving up something and trusting and depending on Him to sustain you through that. Well, I began doing it that Monday, and most people would consider it a Daniel fast where it was, peanuts, whatever. I was just trying to figure it out. You go into it full force and cut out meals at 19, you feel it. But got through that week. I was dealing with a few different things of, one, this summer internship idea. Lord, is that too easy? Is it too familiar? Am I going to continue growing in that, or is it just going to be home, basically? And then there was actually a church down at Liberty that my youth professor was their youth pastor, and so I tried to get in with them to see if I could just volunteer with the youth and get some experience that way. And so I had an internship or an interview to just be kind of an intern with them. And I went, and it wasn't good. I had been praying and fasting that the Lord would be abundantly clear in, that interview and make it pretty clear that if it was for me, that I would know the door would be open, and if it wasn't, that He would make that clear and it would close. And so I got through that interview, and I think I pretty much immediately called my parents and was like, didn't feel right. Don't think that's where I'm supposed to be, which didn't make a whole lot of sense, because why wouldn't it be great for me to be under my youth professor and learn from him with a church that has 200 youth? And so I was like, but I've prayed, I've been seeking the Lord, and He made that clear, and I'm not going to press on anymore for that. I got through, I think that was Thursday of that week, still fasting, still seeking the Lord and what He wanted for me. And Jim and I were texting back and forth, hey, man, you're coming back into town. I had another wedding the next week, or weekend, and he was like, well, before you get down here, why don't you give me a call? So I called him after our convocation, and he said, well, how's school, how's class? Yeah, whatever. Don't want to hold you, don't want to blindside. What would you say to a full-time job come January? And I said, I'm probably going to need to finish school. And he said, well, we want you to finish school, but, I don't want to blindside you come Sunday, but Jacob Clapp is moving on. He's got this great opportunity in Maiden to be a lead pastor at a church plant, and that's something that the Lord has called him to, and I have a full-time job for you come January. And I said, I'm going to need to pray about that. And so I did. I drove down here that Friday, went to another ball game, saw Jim, Jerry, Jacob. Didn't get to say to anybody what was going on, but knew that, that was in the works at least. Had a conversation with Jim and Jerry about, what does this look like realistically for you to come down here, and me to kind of get in my head that this was a possibility. Met with them, and then got through that tough day. I'm sitting back there listening to Jacob announce that he's leaving, crying because I know that what they don't know, and the Lord's been doing some crazy stuff. I think Braxton was like, dude, why are you crying? I'm like, dude, you don't get it. Anyways, so we began, or actually I left that weekend, went back to Liberty and fasted and prayed for another week and said, Lord, if this isn't what you have for me, make it abundantly clear, because as my youth professor had said to us, at some point in your life, you're going to come to a decision where you do seek the Lord in it, and you get to about 51% that the Lord is calling you to it. You're not 100% sure, but you're 51%. And so at that point, your prayer needs to change. It needs to go from, Lord, what do you have for me, to, Lord, if this is what you have for me, continue to make that clear and open these doors. But if it's not, and I'm wrong in this thought process, then make it abundantly clear and close this door in my face so I don't continue to pursue it. And so I went throughout that week seeking reassurance, opening of doors to come here, and the Lord was faithful and provided just that. And so December, I started the transition process, finished my one and only semester at college, and then, moved down here. And so I'm here off Mac Road by myself, figuring it out. But now that we know each other a little bit, me at least, what am I going to be talking about? Well, we're going to be in Deuteronomy 6, where it discusses how Israel was supposed to keep the commandments of God and how parents are supposed to impress these commandments on the hearts of their children. And so we'll get to that in a minute. For now, I want to address what is my job here. We figured out how I got here, but what is my job here? Well, according to my job description, pretty much verbatim, it says, I'm supposed to make disciples of our youth and help them spiritually grow while also forming relationships with middle school and high school students. And then the next line says, an emphasis will be on equipping parents as disciples of their own children. Well, I get to see your kids throughout the weeks, ball games, at Aftershock if they come and serve. But, then it's Sunday nights, and if they come to youth, I have that chance and opportunity to try and disciple them. However, I don't get much of an opportunity to speak to parents. With that being in my job description, with that being on my heart as their youth pastor, I want to address to y'all how I think it should be, in a way. And so I'm obviously not a parent. I don't know much about parenting other than what my parents have done for me. In fact, I could probably be a lot of y'all's kids, if not your grandkid. So what can I tell you about parenting? I can tell you what the Bible says, and I can tell you what it's like to be the child of godly parents. I'm going to end up crying. But, and I'm going to hit on that here in a second, but all my family, immediately and extended just a bit, is here. Again, thank y'all for being here. My dad has been a pastor in the Wesleyan Church for a long time, 20 plus years, and camp has been a part of his life for even longer. But obviously that has, one, made an impact on him, and then we see that it's made an impact on a lot of y'all, but it also made an impact on me, which is a lot of why I'm here. Then getting to see my mom, who taught me what it is to worship, not just from a stage, but also from the kitchen or the living room or basically every other room in the house. But for me in my life, it doesn't just end there in terms of godly parents. It's one of those situations where God took something that was broken and made something beautiful. I have some incredible step-parents who just embody what it's like to lead by example in terms of being godly parents. I can remember a few weeks ago with our young adult group, Jerry asked us, he said, we were going through, what book is this? James. We're going through James, and he's like, who's the wisest person you know? We're talking about biblical wisdom, and I immediately thought of my stepdad, Jesse. And not just that he's wise in terms of he's knowledgeable, but he's wise in and through all situations. If you need an answer to something, he's probably smart enough to know it. But he's also one that we talked about, and I shared with the young adults how if you're in an argument, whether it's me and my brother or other family, and he's in your presence, he's listening, whether you know he's listening or not. But two, with a bit of his therapist background, he's able to just mediate the conversation. He hears your side, he hears their side, and somehow can make you both feel like you're right and wrong and hear the other person's point of view. And as we talked about in the book of James, he's what we'd say is a peacemaker. Now, as for my stepmom, Carmen, in this idea of leading by example, just the other week, before I got to see my Blue Devils win the ACC tournament, and they won last night, but that's a different conversation. They came down. We were going to go down to Charlotte for the tournament, and we're at my house, kind of. It's my grandparents' house that I live in now. And I woke up, went to the kitchen, and I overheard the Bible app coming from the living room. Now, this instance, I don't think she saw or heard that I overheard her. But there's been countless times like this in my life where throughout high school of getting up early to go, weight lift for football at the crack of dawn, coming downstairs to a open Bible at the kitchen table, or the dining room table with, the little reading glasses and locked in, as we'd say. But it's moments like that where it does set an example, and it sets that precedent of, this is what I need to be doing. I see how important it is for a hardworking woman who goes to work every day and doesn't come home till 5 o'clock to get up earlier to address that she needs to grow her relationship with the Lord. And for the last week that, we were here for the ACC tournament, or they were here for the ACC tournament, it wasn't just, we're 3 hours away from home, kind of, but it was also we're 3 hours away from this new kind of Airbnb-style home because in the past week, our house is burnt, and we've had to move out. And while the Lord has been providing and been grateful through that process, it still is a big difference than just being in the comfort of your home, and then also coming down 3 hours, going away from your normal day-to-day routine. And I've talked with the youth about it, how just as important as it is for you to have that routine, that place where you can go and meet the Lord one-on-one, sometimes life happens. And you have to have that rock, that foundation of, no matter what's going on in my life, this is my normal. This is my comfort. So getting to see that as a child has been, it sets the example. Or I can talk about how my mom and Jesse serve every week, and how my mom has MS, but yet she still gets to the church by 8 to go over worship practice, and how they do help with the kids, and Jesse leads and helps with the soundboard. And they don't leave church till 12. And I think more importantly for their faith journey, they've opened their homes to have these small groups with people that you'd say because they're at your church, but you don't really know until they come. And with the understanding that you have to be vulnerable with them. Because I want us to understand that vulnerability is the start and a chance of accountability. And without accountability, we are left to deal with the struggles of life on our own, and that is not what God intended for us. Being vulnerable enough to let someone you trust keep you accountable is so much better than having to deal with it on your own, no matter how uncomfortable it can be. And this is what we as kids need to see from our godly parents. We need to witness our parents being vulnerable. We need to know that it is okay for us to mess up, and that we are going to mess up. I think it's a great platform for parents to use as an opportunity to present the gospel. It's an opportunity for us to grow. As much as you want to be our superheroes, and I think that as kids, you are our superheroes. Sometimes we just need you to be real. And we need to know that this view of mom and dad who have figured it out, or it seems like they figured it out, that we at some point in our lives are going to get there, and we're going to know a little more than we do now. But just as much as you are that person for us, you mess up and you fail and you try again and you figure it out again, and you there's this process to it. But in terms of being real, sometimes you just have to admit when you're wrong to your kid. You have to apologize for, messing up, getting loud, whatever, and having tough conversations with us, whether they make you feel like the parent in the moment. I know sometimes through conversations with mine that they sometimes feel like the child in the situation, and you have to be patient and have that understanding that it's okay for mom and dad to mess up. And that's what I want to point out for our students, that they are going to mess up. They're not perfect, but neither are you, neither am I. And that's the beauty of all of this. We've heard it before, the blood of Christ paid for and covers our sins. I think that this needs to be a foundation for us. And I think as a family, we should start acknowledging that more. Parents, let it be the foundations of your vulnerable conversations that you have. Use them to talk about the gospel, how even though mom and dad are a lot older and seem to have figured it out, that you still need forgiveness. If you want them to have a solid foundation when they leave for college, after they get through however many years of youth and whatever you put them in, if you want them to have a solid foundation, then it starts with what their foundation is like while they're at home. And if I'm going to lead your children effectively through youth and through my job here, then I have to have full cooperation from mom and dad at houses. If you're missing the mark at home, then somewhat according to my job description, but also just in what I feel like the Lord's called me to do here, it's my responsibility to call you out, get you down on the carpet, not for me, but in front of the Lord, and address the situation so that you are properly equipped and that you are in the right heart place to lead your child. Because we are at war for the souls, minds, and hearts of them every day. They have a lot of things that they are intaking that are worldly, whether it's from friends or social media. And if you don't believe me, you should, because I just got out of their shoes. I'm really still in their shoes. If you're not willing to risk everything for the sake of your child or someone else's eternal destination, then I don't think you know who the source of everything is. So how do we do it? How can you parent better? It starts off with mom and dad not only knowing, but living out what you believe at home and in public, not just for Sunday mornings. Moses writes it clearly in Deuteronomy 6, 4-9. He says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates." We see Old Testament in this time was a culture that believed in many gods, but the Israelites believed in one, Yahweh. Jim talked about it last week, about, they didn't use the vowels, so it was YHWH, that it is, and I want to point this out, it is the breath that we breathe. The very first words that you say when you come into this earth as a baby is the name of God, and the very last words that you say when you leave this earth is the name of God. Moses wanted them to know and embrace that theological truth with everything that they were, their hearts, their soul, their strength, but he didn't want them to just know it. He wanted them to live it out and be that example. The same command applies to every Christian parent today. Parents, you have to live this lifestyle in front of your children. You can't just pawn them off to the youth pastor and hope that they're getting it. They come Sunday nights. Some of them come Sunday nights. You're here Sunday mornings, but that can't just be it. I am not going to be the one that makes that much of a difference because I get one night a week. They are with you more than they are with me. In fact, I want to put this percentage up for you. We talked about it while I was at school, that 90% of people are saved by the age of 18. I don't want the pressure to just be all on y'all, because it definitely puts into perspective my job here and how much I am in a precious role to try and lead effectively so that they get it. But it is on you. There is pressure on you to lead and show them why you do this lifestyle of Christianity. With trying to be better at my job, kind of, even though I don't like reading books, really, I was gifted a book by my mom's pastor, actually. It's called Ministry Mutiny. It talks about how there's a youth pastor who is actually 3 years out of college. He's in the works, but he doesn't really feel like he's making any effect. He kind of has this moment of being worn out, and he meets this other youth pastor at this little conference thing that is like 45 and still in youth ministry, which I know is not the normal. And so they get to talking about, how do you do this? Like, how have you spent 20 years, even though you are older now, still leading 6th through 12th graders? And they get through these principles of, ministry mutiny, what to cut out, what's important. But what I want to say to y'all today from this book, I'm going to read a poem. It's from a perspective of a child who is in the church. His parents are, I think it says in the book that his dad's an elder. But his perception is clearly, I think, on point for his parents, but it puts them in a position of noticing they need to change. It's called, If You Could See What I See. It says, "You tell me to get a job, earn my keep, and purchase all the little things I want and need. You tell me to go to church so I can be religious and find some inner harmony while looking quite prestigious. But what you say so often makes no sense to me. I do not understand at all what you're telling me. You have a college education, a reputation that is strong. You have a great vocation. You work hard and smart and long. But I see no reason to go to church with you. I see no inner love or peace in what you say or do. I don't see any evidence of this God you claim to know. I don't hear him in the words you speak. I don't sense him in your soul. So I will get a real job, and I'll go to college too. I'll build a solid reputation by the hard work that I'll do. But when it comes to church and stuff, I think that I'll pass. I have no need to look prestigious to my Bible class. So you can go to church on Sunday. You can seek your own applause. You can keep your stale religion, and you can keep your tiny God." That one, it's real. I don't know if y'all feel like that at times. I don't know if the kids feel like that at times. Chances are, in a way, whether it's strictly, this religion of Christianity and there's set things that we do because we do them. I don't know if that's how it feels, but chances are there are times like that. So parents, what do you do? How do you, not live like that? Make sure that your kids don't feel like that that's not the example that they're getting. You set the example by living out your faith every day. Tell your students of how God has moved in your life. We read in Deuteronomy 6:20 through 25. It says, "In the future, when your son asks you, 'What is the meaning of the stipulations, decrees, and laws the Lord our God has commanded you?' Tell him, 'We were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Before our eyes the Lord sent signs and wonders, great and terrible, on Egypt and Pharaoh and his whole household. But he brought us out from there to bring us in and give us the land he promised on oath to our ancestors. The Lord commanded us to obey all these decrees and to fear the Lord our God so that we might always prosper and be kept alive, as is the case today. And if we are careful to obey all this law before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us, that will be our righteousness.'" So, mom, dad, tell them your story. Tell them how God has worked in and through you, in and through your life, how he has brought you out of Egypt into this promised land, and that he has provided for you. Students, it's my challenge to y'all. When we leave, ask mom and dad, what's your testimony? Why do I live this lifestyle? Why is it important for us to come to church, for me to go to youth, for me to believe what you're telling me to believe? I want you to ask how they learned of Christ. I think that's something that we don't talk about enough, is our testimony, and that there is power in our testimonies. But parents, I want you to be honest. I want you to talk about your struggles. I want you to be vulnerable and have those tough conversations so that it will lead to accountability and lead to your child understanding that it's okay, and that we all mess up, and that the Lord has provided this gift of grace, and that we all need it. I want you to use your story to encourage your children, that they may go and continue this lifestyle in their walk with the Lord. So as we wrap up, I'm going to pray, and then the band can come back out. But after we finish this last song, I'm going to come back up and give you more directions as to how I want to close the whole service, but I'll pray for now. Dear God, I thank you for today. I thank you for all of the ways that you have used me and just moved in my life in and through all of my family. Continue to work in me. Let it not be myself that gets the glory, but let it be you alone. I ask that as we leave, that parents would have vulnerable conversations, that they would address situations a little bit differently, that they may go back on some other situations where they may have done it wrong, ask for forgiveness. It's my prayer that the students would be gracious and they'd be vulnerable, and that we could start an accountability process that would lead to growth, that would lead to just relationships of trust with one another, that we don't have to do it alone. That as much as mom and dad are our superheroes, that sometimes they fall short, as we often do, and they need that grace and forgiveness, and that even though they're older, we, as their child, can give them that grace that they deserve. So as we leave this place and we continue to worship, that's my prayer, and it's in Jesus' name, amen.